Welcome everybody to a new video where today I want to discuss the new information about Hollow Knight Silksong that came out of Edge magazine that had a world exclusive interview with the co-directors of the studio, Team Cherry. And to discuss that with me today I am joined by my good friend David. David, how's it going?
It's going well. I was really looking forward to this date because we haven't heard anything about this game in such a long time. When was the last time we heard anything about this?
I think the last time we heard something about Hollow Knight Silksong was last year during the Nintendo Direct, where they had actually quite a lot of footage to show. And then today Edge magazine came out and they had an interview with the co-directors where they came with a lot of information that explains things that you could see back then in the B-roll, and also with some new information. So I just want to discuss it with you because I think what they talk about is very interesting. So yeah, I would say let's get to it. What is this exactly? So Hollow Knight Silksong is really a sequel to Hollow Knight. That's what the developers describe in the interview. The player takes control of Hornet, who was the kind of rival character to the player in the first game. And Hornet, the way the co-developers describe it in the interview, is actually a very different character. She's more humanoid, which means that she controls in a different way. She also has a different weapon. She has a longer needle than the original knight from the original. And she also has a personality. For me, that really changes like the way Hollow Knight Silksong is compared to the previous game.
Why is that? Because for me, I've just started playing, but for me, it's Hollow Knight. It's really made out of the world. Like the world is the main character for me, where they're switching to the focus more on the main character right now. So how would that affect the game compared to the original?
Well, in the original, you encountered her a couple of times, Hornet, and you saw she's actually a princess of the world. So she actually had a profound impact on the world. And what you see in this new in Hollow Knight Silksong is that because she already had a personality from the previous game, they take that to this game. So she's not like the original knight from the original Hollow Knight was kind of like a vessel for the player. It kind of was like a player, like for example Link in the Legend of Zelda games is actually a reflection of the player. And therefore Hornet is really supposed to be a different character. She's also not a bug like the original knight. She's half bug, so she's half spider and half worm. And therefore she has like different kinds of mechanics. That's what they also talk about in the interview. For example, she can use silk. That's really the main, let's say, element that it's in the title, of course. It's silk and song. And so there is a huge silk mechanic now. And if you have a look at the screenshots that they have.
Where does he use the silk for?
So silk is used in different ways. You have a little silk spoon, a little silk spool in the top left corner of your screen, and that's basically where Hornet, where you can recharge the silk along the way. If you remember from the last game, Hornet was able to, for example, use silk to grapple to certain parts of the environment, but also to use it to throw her needle and then pull it back to herself. So it has like a weapon type of mechanic, but also you can use it to traverse the environment. So it's very, very versatile, so to say. And of course, it fits the game very well. I mean, it's a game about spiders and bugs, so it fits really well into the environment. And then
so silk is one part of the title, and the other part is the song mechanic, and that I thought that was really interesting because I love song and music mechanics in games, in adventures, like how they use the Ocarina of Time in Ocarina of Time, the ocarina. How will we see this in Silksong?
Yeah, that's very interesting what I read about that, because I kind of didn't really expect that would be such a big part of the game. But music and song is really integral to the gameplay. For example, it's actually possible for Hornet to give like there's a screenshot of that where she gives like a serenade to a different character, and she uses for that serenade her needle, her weapon. So apparently it's a way to connect with other player characters. And I thought that was very interesting, and I'm really curious like how big this element is going to be in the game.
But it will also impact the surrounding world, right? Like there is a new world, it's called Parloom, but it probably will have an effect on the world, the songs.
Yeah, I think so too. Perhaps, I mean, this is all speculation from my part, but you can use like the songs to perhaps gain access to different parts of the environment or to unlock different quests, etc. So that's all. We gotta wait and see what kind of, how extensive it's going to be. But that's very interesting indeed. I'm really curious how they're going to kind of like use that in the world, because like you said before, like the world is very important in Hollow Knight. It's really the traversal through the world. And like you said, Farloom, which is the new world, which the co-directors talk about in the interview, it's the same, but also a bit different compared to the previous game.
I read there's a lot of diversity in the game, right? In the world. Where in Hollow Knight, it was more of the same and more of the same again. And this time they're exploring more different kind of locations, but in the same world.
Yeah, so it's still like a bug nest, an infested bug nest. But the difference is that maybe if you remember in Hollow Knight, you start at the top and you burrow your way down towards the deep nest, the hive. So you go deeper and deeper into the ground, and but the way they do it in Silksong is completely different. The way they describe it in the interview, you actually start at the bottom of the hive. It's a new kingdom called Farloom, and you work your way up. So the goal is for Hornet to reach the top of the world and reach. Apparently, there's a citadel there. So they talk about the citadel, which is there, and it's not exactly clear what is happening over there in the citadel. But she must get there for some kind of reason. And the developers, is really interesting the way they talk about it. They say like, they compare it actually to an older game, Castlevania The Lords of Shadow from 2010. And they mention that it's the journey to the castle first. And then from the castle onwards, you have another journey. For example, to get to the top of the castle. And I thought that was really interesting. I think they take they mention also Metroidvania in general is a massive influence on their game design. Of course, you see that when you look at the previous game.
And it sounds it's gonna be really big and much bigger than the original.
Yeah, and that's also very interesting because the reason that it's so big, they say, it's also because Hornet is taller. She's more humanoid. So she can jump all around the environment, and that's why they have to make the environment a lot bigger as well, because you have a different way of traversal. And I thought that was so interesting that they mentioned that the environment's actually bigger because Hollow Knight is already a huge game. Yeah, I want to zoom a little bit in on these religious aspects, because that's what you will see. You make this journey to the top, to the citadel. You will see other kinds of bugs on like a pilgrimage to this citadel, and they are transporting silk. And I think that's really interesting, and they really connected this religious aspect of the game with the gameplay itself. So for example, there's this is also very interesting that I read about. There is a rosemary beads mechanic. In the first game, you collected what's called geo. That's like the currency of the game. But in the second game, you connect like beads, these prayer beads. You know them from various religions. And while you are collecting them, you can actually go to a merchant and tell them to string them together. And using that, you can keep them if you die. So the mechanic worked like that. If you died, you would lose all your geo or your beats. But if you string them together, that won't happen anymore. And I really like that they interwoven like these religious aspects also in the gameplay, not only in the story. Also, the upgrade system changed. So if you remember from the previous game, you had what was called charms, which gave your knight like different kinds of abilities. But they really changed that in the in Hollow Knight Silksong. So this time you don't have these charms anymore that you can equip, but they have what they call tools. And you can find various tools throughout the world. For example, a tool that allows you to throw your needle, or a tool that allows you to place like spike bombs in the environment. That was actually an ability that she had in the previous game. And one thing that was very interesting is that the developer said she can actually learn some of these tools by observing other enemies.
I also read they made the enemies in general much more advanced and dangerous. Even the most basic enemies will be smarter and can do much more in Silksong.
I think they even mentioned, they say like that enemies, it won't be like in the previous game, for example, enemies were kind of, well, let's say sometimes dumb. They walked from cliffs because they couldn't really, I don't know, they were not so smart. But that for sure won't happen again in this game. So I kind of like that. It looks like it's a harder game, but also a different game. So
for me, it sounds like they put in much of the things they actually wanted to put in the first game, but just didn't get the time for, or were thinking about it when developing it. So in general, it looks just like a much better and product and a real sequel.
Yeah, and if you remember, the original Hollow Knight, Silksong was actually supposed to be a expansion for that, because they went over the Kickstarter budget back then. Then they said, okay, so we're gonna make another expansion. It's called Silksong. And then during the development, and I like this so much from this developer, they kind of decided, okay, it's gonna be such a big expansion. It's not even an expansion anymore. It's its own standalone title. I like the approach that they're taking, because they just started developing, and during developing they figured out like, oh, it's actually a real different new game. And Team Cherry, the developer, I mean, it's only 3 people, so they can do whatever they want. They have nobody to answer for.
We don't have any release date yet, right? But it is currently announced for PC and Switch.
It's announced for the PC and Switch. Still no release date, but from the way I hear from the interview and the way I hear the developers, and we've seen the gameplay already from last year during the Nintendo Treehouse, which looked pretty solid. My guess is it's going to be a 2021 game. What do you think?
Sure. I think it's already finished.
The game.
Just polishing it and adding more stuff.
I think it's a little bit a bummer for PlayStation 4 and Xbox owners who also want to play Hollow Knight Silksong. But I think, I don't know how you think about it, but Hollow Knight, it's like a perfect Nintendo game.
Yeah, I love that it's so mysterious, and how the lore is how lore is evolving by exploring the world. All these parts just come together in a perfect way.
And I kind of like back in the day, I always thought like, oh, what's it like under the ground?
Yeah, it makes you want to explore this new world.
Yeah, You always think like, what's it like underground? And you think like, oh, it's a giant kingdom of bugs. It's such a nice world to be in. I mean, it's kind of scary because it's all dark and it's all bugs and it's spiders and. Well, yeah, I guess that's it. So maybe this is also interesting to discuss. The developers said that they kind of hint that the next game is not going to be a Hollow Knight, and that this is actually the last title in that series for now. So I'm just gonna read the quote. So they say, well, we have that non-Hollow Knight game that is due to be made. And then he later says, making a game that's not Hollow Knight, it's not that different. They're just big worlds that we can run around in and meet new characters and go on adventures. The theme might change slightly in that you don't have a sword or a needle anymore, but beyond that, it's pretty much the same experience. Maybe the characters won't have as many horns. We could learn to not make our world so big. I wonder what would happen. I kind of think it's probably impossible, but we could try. Unquote.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see where they will be heading. It sounds like they're sticking to the Metroidvania genre, but maybe just looking for a little bit more of a focused storyline without too much distractions and exploring. But it could work really good if they have a good team and a good idea to develop.
They're curious about what a smaller game would look like. And I, of course, very curious what this team can make. I went to their website actually, and it said that there are only 3 of them. I mean, it's a very small team, not counting the composer. They're amazingly creative, and I would say they should just do whatever they want. And the next game, sure, if it's not Hollow Knight, I can always have more Hollow Knight, but I would definitely like to see a different type of game as well, sure.
Yeah, and I think it will be quite soon. We'll get to experience more Hollow Knight.
Let's hope so. So it says TBA, but we just say it's 2021. So
I think even early 2021.
If it comes out this year, it will be toe-to-toe against the biggest titles of the year, for sure. If we don't get Metroid Prime 4 this year, then we at least are getting a Hollow Knight, which I am perfectly fine with as well. So that's it for our Hollow Knight Silksong, like small in-depth analysis of the Edge article. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I wish you a very good 2021. We are recording this now still in 2020, but when you're seeing this, it's probably 2021 already. So I wish everybody the best for the new year, and we'll see you soon again. Thank you very much.